This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We have got a loaded Tuesday on tap here on Covering the Spread. We're going to take our first look at NFL Week number 2 lines, let you know what my numbers are saying about those, and also recap Week number 1. But first, we got to talk some pitching props. Rob Friedman, Pitching Ninjas, here to break down his favorite bets for Tuesday. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joining me here as he does every Tuesday is Rob Friedman. Check him out on Twitter at Pitching Ninja. Find his work at Fox Sports, Peacock, MLB, and Nesson. Rob, it is a DeGrom day, so I feel like I know the answer, but how you doing today?
I'm doing great. There's a ton of great pitching today, too. Like, it's not just DeGrom, it's like everybody. They need to spread it out more, don't you think?
I know. We'll assign DeGrom every Monday. We'll assign Cole every Tuesday, Darvish Thursday. We can probably work it around that way, right?
I think that's a great idea. Spread it out. My work gets too tough if you have them all in one day.
That's right. Now, we were talking before the show, and you were like, we were talking about Reed Detmers, and you pulled up a baseball, like, out of the screen, like, out of nowhere. So are you just constantly holding a baseball at all times, waiting to explain, like, grips? Or is this just like because I play with my hands, too, because I have, like, massive, like, ADHD, as you could probably tell. Like, I play with things with my hands, too, but is it just, like, a fidgeting thing, or just, like, you need this to, like, show, like, grips and stuff like that?
I'd like to say it's about grips. I do constantly play with grips, but it's more of a fidgety thing, I think. Yeah. It's just something that I have that I enjoy. I don't know. It's different, right? Like, it's better than one of those fidget spinner things that people used to use.
My object of the day is my wireless headphones. They're just here. I just feel like playing with them right now. So I am fully on board with this. I do have a couple like fantasy baseball trophies that are baseballs. I could play with that instead. We'll work on this and workshop optimal route.
Clean Fuego here too, which is a training thing, but I sometimes will use this too. I don't know, man.
I love it. I love it. And the good thing is you can distract yourself as you're sweating some strikeout props for tonight. Hopefully not sweating too much. Let's dive in the strikeout props you have on tap for Tuesday. We mentioned DeGrom. We got Garrett Cole tonight. When you're looking at the board in terms of strikeout props, what's standing out to you?
Well, I myself have a 3-leg parlay with Cole for 7 Ks or more, Darvish for 7 Ks or more, and Kyle Wright in the nightcap for 6 Ks or more. Because I think the Braves had like 14 Ks last night. I think they figured the Giants out. Giants K a decent amount, and Wright is an underrated stud. So look for him to cap it off. I'm planning to win tonight, Jim.
I mean, last week we had you on. You had the Jesus Luzardo, Aaron Nola, nice strikeout parlay. They did get there. You had the guy who got scratched. I can't remember who was scratched. Drew Rasmussen got scratched.
Yeah, before that killed me.
Yeah, but like, hey, you got those two. Hopefully, it's just like, you ride at those two. That one worked for sure. So I'm feeling pretty good about this one, Rob. You got Cole over 6.5. That's minus 150. Darvish over 6.5 is plus 104. Wright over 5.5 plus 116. Now, Wright, rocky start last time out, but the overall trend for Wright has seemed to be getting more strikeouts. Are you kind of picking up on the same thing that I have? Because it seems like there's been a bit more juice in him from a strikeout perspective recently.
I agree, and I think he's always a threat to have a 10K game. Like, to me, Wright stuff when he's on, his curveball is one of the better curveballs in the majors, and I think pitching alongside Charlie Morton's really helped him. So I like it. He's got a lot of confidence in his game. Yeah, I mean, I definitely sense a trend up, but he's been good all year. Like, he's a legit, top tier starter, and a lot of people don't realize that.
I mean, wins are not a good stat, but like the fact that he has 17 of them, that probably indicates he's been pitching pretty well. So good year for Kyle Wright. And if you combine all three of those together, it's plus 634 over at FanDuel Sportsbook right now with Cole, Darvish, and Wright at 7, 7, and 6 respectively. I do want to talk to you about Jacob DeGrom, though, before we let you go for today, because DeGrom's strikeout prop is 9.5, minus 140 on the over. Now, I told you before, I've got him projected at 10.5. For today, which would lead you to believe I'd like the over, but I have a hard time getting there, Rob. This is an astronomical number. What's your read on Jacob DeGrom facing off against a high strikeout Cubs team?
Yeah, I mean, my guess, I always go the over for DeGrom just because it's more rooting though than actual math. Right. When DeGrom strikes out a lot of hitters, it's a good day for me, and I love watching him pitch. He is like a highlight in and of himself. Drop everything every time he throws. as good as anybody that's ever pitched in the game. So yeah, I like him for the over, but I don't like minus 140.
No,
come on.
Like, I agree with you. It's a rooting interest kind of thing at that point because he's just so fun to watch. Now, the one I do like for today is Jordan Montgomery. And Montgomery, to me, has undergone this fascinating shift ever since he joined the Cardinals, where it seems like a totally different pitcher in terms of his approach, in terms of the way he's pitching out there. What have you seen with Jordan Montgomery with the Cardinals that's made him so different than what he was with the Yankees?
It really is. And I just saw an interview with him where he talked about that. It's a whole degree of confidence. The Yankees said, hey, Jordan, your fastball sucks. So why don't you rely on your off-speed pitches? And he was like, it made him tentative and not attacking. Now he's comfortable throwing all of his pitches on any count. He believes in his fastball. And honestly, believing is a huge part of pitching. If you have confidence in your stuff, it just plays better. So by him loving his fastball, it's really upped his game. And you're seeing more Ks, you're seeing more dominance. He's always been good, but this has made him really good. So again, sometimes analytics drives, you can match analytics, but you have to match it with a pitcher's psyche. And for Montgomery, it really affected him and made him tentative. So now that everything's off and he's throwing like he wants to throw. So I like that. I think 6Ks is certainly a good number for him. He's random. Sometimes he's not a high K dude, right. But yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's at plus 118 right now to get 6+ strikeouts over a FanDuel Sportsbook. You might be able to get a better number elsewhere. So I would shop around on Montgomery, see if you can get a 4.5 still out there, something like that, because I think that there is a lot of value in that. He's facing the Brewers, another high strikeout team.
They are.
I think that does bode well for Montgomery for tonight. And you were talking about, the confidence thing. He's always been a weird pitcher for me, Rob. And I want to ask you about this because it seems like he's always been a guy where he's gotten more whiffs than he's gotten strikeouts. And that's a weird alignment there. Typically those things correlate pretty well. Why is that though? Why was he kind of a guy who underperformed in the strikeout department relative to what you think based on the number of swings and misses he got?
Great pickup, because that is exactly what he said. He said what happens is he would get ahead in counts. And then because everyone knew that he didn't think that his fastball wasn't the pitch he was relying on, he'd try to flip in some off speed. And it was basically an auto take. So if you have 2 strikes on somebody, you're auto taking, know the ball's going to be out of the zone. And it led to fewer strikeouts. So gets a lot of swings and misses, gets to 2 strikes. And then because of that mentality, it was tougher for him to put hitters away. And now he can throw any pitch with 2 strikes and get the K.
Well, he's been fun to watch so far. He had a great outing against the Brewers last time, so we'll see if Montgomery can get there again. 6+ strikeouts, plus 118 at FanDuel Sportsbook right now. Check out Rob's 3-leg parlay with Cole over 6.5, Darvish over 6.5, and Wright over 5.5. Again, plus 634 right now over FanDuel Sportsbook. We'll see if you can duplicate the success you had last week with the Nola and Luzardo calls. That is Rob Friedman. Check him out on Twitter at Pitching Ninja and find him basically wherever you consume baseball. You can find Rob. Rob, I appreciate it. Have fun watching DeGrom, Cole, Darvish all throughout the entire night. We'll talk to you once again next week.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Jim.
Thank you, Rob. Again, check out Rob on Twitter at Pitching Ninja and find all those fun, delightful gifts at Pitching Ninja on Twitter. And I'll find his work at Fox Sports, Peacock, MLB, and NESN. We're going to dive into NFL week number 2 in just 1 second here and break down what my numbers are saying about this week. Get our first look at that slate in just 1 second. But first, big news. FanDuel has an all-new mobile gaming app, FanDuel Face-Off. FanDuel Face-Off is where you compete in quick, fun games against other real people for real cash. It has all sorts of games you're familiar with, like Home Run Derby, Wheel of Fortune, puzzle and strategy games, and Pat McAfee's kicking game as well. Contests are action-packed and last 2 to 5 minutes, so you can play on your couch, waiting in line, during a commercial break, wherever and on your schedule. Plus, you can practice for free anytime, whether it be head-to-head, multiplayer, or larger tournaments. FanDuel Face-Off has something for you. Plus, in most contests, you match against players of similar skill levels, so you're never completely overmatched, even as a beginner. FanDuel Face-Off is also tied to your FanDuel account and wallet, so you can easily use your daily fantasy funds or sportsbook winnings in the app. Visit FanDuel.com/faceoff or download the FanDuel Face-Off app in the Apple App Store today to get in the game. Age and location restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See FanDuel.com/faceoff-terms for terms and conditions. Now, what we'll be doing here each Tuesday, and this is kind of our first time doing it without the benefit of a lot of time for these numbers to move, is breaking down the opening numbers across the NFL and laying out where my numbers are seeing value. And what I'll do is I'll lay out where they see value and whether I agree with it and whether I'm willing to bet it or not, because those are some key distinctions. I don't always agree with what my numbers are saying. And unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately, depending on, your view of things, I'm seeing a lot of value in underdogs once again for this week. This one is unfortunate. The spot where my numbers are showing the most value is the Cardinals plus 5.5 against the Raiders. Turns out now, I did the exact same thing. I don't blame you. We talked about this in the show last week where my numbers like the Cardinals moved against me, did not go well, very obviously. But 5.5 is a big number, opened at 2.5 and moved pretty steadily between Monday into Tuesday. I think it moved too far. Now, for me, plus 5.5, I'm willing to take that. So I have the Cardinals plus 5.5 in the spot. I will lock that in now. I will say, personally, I have bet the money line as well. The money line for the Cardinals is plus 8 at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's not necessarily what I recommend. Like, there's a difference between like betting it myself and recommending it. I'm not sure if this is a do as I say, not as I do situation. I think you should go with the points versus the money line here. But I think they're a volatile team, and volatility is good if you're going to get a lot of plus money on that money line. And again, I'm showing a lot of value on that. I'm not going to lie. The Cardinals are favored in my model. I'll be fully transparent with you. I think you deserve to know that. But so I have taken the money line personally. I think for the show, I want to officially recommend 5.5 at minus 110, but I think there's value in the money line. I'm not going to recommend it. So if they win, I'm not going to take credit for it here on the podcast, but I did take it myself. So I would dig into the Cardinals there to see if there's something you like. Number 2, in terms of most undervalued for this week, based on my numbers, is last night's winner, the Seattle freaking Seahawks, Geno Smith MVP on the way here in 2022. And I don't think it's an overreaction to last week. They're facing the 49ers. This spread is plus 8.5 in favor of the Seahawks. And I think that's enough for me to bite on them. It's not an overreaction to last week. I'm assuming that George Kittle will play in my current numbers. And even with Kittle being active, I still show value on the Seattle side of things because I think this defense is better than perception. Obviously, a lot of flukiness in that game last night. You don't expect 2 fumbles in the goal line, some odd decision-making. They should have lost last night's game, all things considered. So, and again, week 1 is not a big component in my model. It's still mostly a prior that's driving this recommendation, but pretty good defense. I think that ground game would be pretty efficient. The offensive line, I like a decent amount based on how the 2 rookies have played since the start of the preseason. So I have taken this one, Seattle plus 8.5 at minus 110. I think there is value in that. So Cardinals plus 5.5, Seattle plus 8.5. Those are the primary ones for me. There are 2 money lines that stand out. Again, both these are underdogs, but both these are spots where I actually think these teams should be favored. Those are Carolina and Washington. Carolina facing off with the Giants. And I have the Panthers favored in this one by 1.1 points. That game is on the road up in New York. But I thought the Panthers looked okay in week 1. Obviously, they did not win. They played pretty terribly in the first half, but seemed to gel a bit more in the second half. Baker Mayfield is letting a rip to Robbie Anderson. Obviously, big plays are kind of fluky. So again, similar to the Seahawks win, I don't want to put a lot of weight into what we saw from the Panthers in week 1. This is still largely based on a prior, but the Giants offense, we saw Daniel Jones still make some of the same mistakes he's made. The Panthers can at times generate a pass rush as well. So plus 118 on the money line here, I think is pretty good. Again, considering that I have the Panthers favored within this game. That spread, if you want to go that way instead, is currently at 2.5 in favor of the Giants here. The Giants 2.5 point favorites. I think it's a lot of swing on the Giants based on sentiment of what they did in week 1 against a team that I didn't like coming into the year, in the Titans. I had the Giants plus 6.5 in this spot. So was down on the Titans, inherently wound up being high on the Giants. I feel like this has been an overreaction. Opened at the Giants by 1, has moved to 2.5. I don't think it should have moved. I think it should have stayed pat at 1. So I'll take the Panthers on the money line plus 118 here against the Giants. Other one, as mentioned, is Washington plus 115 against the Lions. I have historically been far too high on Jared Goff and far too low on Carson Wentz. Maybe not too low on Wentz, but not high on him, to say the least. So it was a bit of a surprise for me to open up my sheet and see that I was showing value in this one here on the Washington side of things. Similar to the Panthers, I have the Commanders favored in this game by 1.2 points over the Lions. That is considering home field advantage and stuff like that. Washington looked okay. They seemed pretty efficient in terms of passing, getting the ball to Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, in addition to Terry McLaurin. This is a lot more, like we talk a lot about Wentz versus Taylor Heineke, but this is a lot more skill position talent too on the Washington side of things. So I think it's a pretty big upgrade for them offensively to have these guys in place, and I don't think we're accounting for that in this number. Lions fell down pretty big to the Eagles. To their credit, they did claw their way back, but the fact they had to claw their way back should stick in our minds as well. Same thing with Washington against Jacksonville. But I do think that Washington is undervalued here. So the two money lines I like right now, Washington plus 115, Carolina plus 118. So those are the four bets I have right now. Carolina plus 118, Washington plus 115, Seattle plus 8.5 on the spread, and Arizona plus 5.5 on the spread. And again, I bet their money line too because I hate money. Why not? Other games I'm keeping an eye on right now in terms of where my numbers are showing value, I'm looking at the Falcons plus 10.5 against the Rams. Not quite confident enough in that to pull the trigger because it's a negative game script for Marcus Mariota against a team that has extra rest, has Aaron Donald, has Jalen Ramsey. Tough situation for Atlanta. If it were to move a bit more, maybe I'd buy in. Obviously, not a lot of key numbers between 10 and 14, so movement wouldn't really matter all that much. I am showing value right there. Not enough for me to believe in it and actually bet that one, though. Currently showing value in Miami, plus 3.5 against Baltimore. I'm interested in that one. My numbers are lower on the Ravens than most spots seem to be. They obviously played pretty well in week one, but it wasn't like some blowout by any means. The reason I'm holding off on this one is I want to see the status of Ronnie Stanley. Stanley did practice throughout last week, but did not play. Marcus Peters didn't play either. If they get those two guys back, once I bake that in, I'm guessing this one might not be showing as much value for me. So holding off on the Dolphins plus 3.5, monitoring those two guys, Peters and Stanley specifically, to see what their status may be heading into week number 2. Maybe I'll bite on that later if it seems like Stanley might not go or if Peters may not go. Currently not biting, but at least keeping an eye on it. My numbers show value in the Titans plus 9.5 against the Bills. Nope. No interest, no consideration there. I am not doing it. I don't hate myself that much. The Bills looked awesome in week 1. The Titans did not. So I'm not taking that one. It'd have to move a lot. I have to show a lot of value to be tempted there. So no real interest there. And the other one where I am showing some value is the Vikings against the Eagles. Right now, that's at either 1.5 or 2, depending on the book. I did take this at 2.5 yesterday. I had not run my full model yet, but I thought I'd probably show value in the Vikings, and I do. It's now to 1.5. I'm still showing value there, not enough where I'm looking to bet it, but because again, I have the 2.5. But I think if you're high in the Vikings, there is still a bit of value there, so you could turn there as well. So monitoring right now in terms of spreads, the Vikings, not monitoring the Titans, and then monitoring the Dolphins and the Falcons, but I've not. I would not bet those at their current numbers as of right now. The one money line we did not get to that I am monitoring is the Jags. Kind of think the Jags are interesting. Jacksonville facing off with Indianapolis. Their money line right now is plus 168. So their implied win odds, 37%. Not showing a ton of value there. It's I've got them at 39.5% to win this game. So not a ton of value, but I also do believe in it. So it's one of those where the value is thinner, but I feel good about the value that it's showing. The Jags, very pass heavy week number 1. Colts defense didn't seem to be anything to write home about. I think Shaq Leonard's probably going to play this week based on the fact he did practice throughout last week, didn't play last week, but I think he'll probably be in there. So they're interesting. I want to keep an eye on this one, see the way it moves. The Jags did some things that caught my attention in a positive way in week 1. So monitoring that one as well. And we'll see if I do wind up biting on that one. Not totally sure yet. So the 4 bets locked in. This will probably be the podcast where I talk about the bets that I like the most for the week. I'll probably add in maybe one on Thursdays when I talk with Ryan or talk with some player props with JJ on Friday. But for the most part, the bets I have for the show will be discussed on these Tuesday shows. So I would recommend tuning in for those each time to see where we're seeing some value. But for right now, I think the biggest value would be in taking the Panthers money line, Commanders money line, and then the spread on the Seahawks and the Cardinals. We'll see if that one goes in for this week. So that's our week 2 first look. But I also want to keep the accountability section of the podcast here in place. So we are going to go back and recap last week's show as well and break down where or how bets went, just to give you like an idea of, okay, here's how our things did. So you know if you want to listen to us or not. Would recommend listening to Dr. Ed Feng. We have him on here every Wednesday. Ed is now 3-0 in college football for this year. He had USC at -9.5 against Stanford. Stanford did claw back in the fourth quarter, but couldn't get the backdoor cover. This was a back there. USC won by 13. So Ed, 3-0 to open the year. Nice start by Ed. Check out Ed on Twitter at The Power Rank and check out his work at thepowerrank.com. Our guest on the college side of things was Drew Martin. You can find Drew on Twitter at Drew Martin Bets. Awesome movement for Drew on both of his bets. Just tough results, but great movement here. He had Miami -23.5 against USM. That one closed at 27.5. So 4 points of movements, but they won by 23. So a loss by the hook there, unfortunately, for Drew. But again, 4 points of movement, that counts for a lot. So a good process bet for Drew. Similar stuff for Baylor BYU. Total there was 53.5. He liked the over. It closed up at 55, so 1.5 points in his favor. But both Gunnar Romney and Puka Nacua were ruled out on Saturday. That probably hurt things a little bit here in terms of the total. That game did go to OT, but couldn't quite get the over there. So good movement for Drew. Bad luck in terms of the guys being ruled out for BYU. Bad luck in terms of the way things finished in that Miami game, but good movement across the board, just not the results. Long term, CLV is probably going to pay off for Drew. So check him out on Twitter at Drew Martin Bets. Ryan Williams, Ryan Alexander _W. Awesome start to him here on covering the spread as well. He went 3-0 on his spread bets on Thursday. That was the Bucks -2.5, the Texans +7.5, and the Steelers +6.5. And he won all three. Got the outright win with the Steelers, got the tie with the Texans, the Bucks. They didn't even play great, but they just played better than Dallas. So missing a couple totals, so 3-2 week overall for Ryan, but really nice showing on the spreads there. Ryan says spreads are not his favorite thing. Maybe they should be. Good week by Ryan there. He did, I don't know if we talked about this in the show, but he did take the Bears money line as like a personal bet and hit that. So nice week for Ryan, who is a Bears season ticket holder. Good little week there from Ryan. We'll have him back on Thursday to break down some NFL week 2 lines as well. I was 4-2 on the week. My bets were the two early ones. That was the Texans +8.5, Giants +6.5. I mentioned on last week's show, the first look, that there was value in both money lines. I would have pushed on the Texans because of the tie, but one on the Giants. I did not take that myself. So again, does not count for the record, but feel pretty good about that. I think that the model was high on them. Felt good about that. Good process bets, and they won for me as well. Other bets beside those two, the spread bets there, were the Patriots +3.5, the Browns money line at +112 when we discussed it, and the Cardinals money line at +158. Woof on the Cardinals, woof on the Patriots. They both lost big. Never gave me hope, which I appreciate because I didn't have to sweat that one. On the Browns, a lot of sweat, but good movement. They did close as favorites for that game. I think at -116 or so, somewhere in there. So good movement there. Good results. Had to sweat it quite a bit, but did get the win there. And then the one prop I discussed last night was Noah Fant under 24.5 receiving yards. He finished at 16 yards, I believe. So out of the one prop win there. So 4-2 week overall. The Cardinals won, maddening. The Patriots sucked, and that was frustrating, but overall, feel pretty good about the way that last week went. Finally, we had JJ Zachariason on to talk props last week over on Friday. His week was similar to Drew, where bad luck in his corner, but I think good process bets. JJ hit Davis Mills over 217.5 at -115. I believe that one hit before overtime. He was like right on the number early on that game. Then they just ran for the entire second half. I believe he got there before overtime, though. So over 217.5, that one cashed regardless. JJ had Antonio Gibson over 58.5 rushing yards. He finished with exactly 58. Brutal beat there for JJ. But again, I think the thought process was there for JJ on that one. Touchdown bets for Mike Davis and Josh Palmer. Anytime touchdowns at plus 150, plus 340 respectively. Then he had Matt Ryan over 1.5 touchdowns at plus 102. The plus money bets did not hit. Davis Mills did. So close on Gibson. So just bad luck for JJ and Drew this past week, but good starts for both Ed and Ryan. I feel pretty good about how things started for myself as well, despite beating my head against the wall with the Cardinals. We'll see if that happens again this week, but overall, pretty good start to the week, to the year for the podcast here. We'll keep these covering the past segments on Tuesdays for accountability purposes. So if you want to hear how we did and decide, do I agree with them? Should I bet this? Check things out on Tuesdays after the first look, and we'll go through all of that. That's all that we have here for today, though. Our college football betting preview coming up tomorrow. We'll have Ed Feng on once again to get his read on his favorite bets of the week, and we'll talk about, see if Ed can move to 4-0 or 5-0 as well on that side of things. We'll have our full NFL week preview coming up on Thursday with Ryan Williams, and our player prop preview coming up on Friday with JJ Zacharyson. To get all those, make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing, if you're winning some money out there, leave us a rating and review, because that does help us out a bunch. Big thank you to Rob Friedman at Pitching Ninja for joining us and talking about strikeout props he likes for today. Check out Rob on Twitter at Pitching Ninja. I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Thank you all for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB strikeout props for Tuesday night. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down college football week number 3. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.